Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name's Daniel, and I'm the Vegan Nazarite. Well, everybody, welcome again to this edition of the Shabbat Torah reading. Today, we're going to be reading Re'eh, which is Deuteronomy 11:26 to 16:17. And the prophet this week is Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 11 to chapter 55, verse 5. I hope you had a wonderful week. I'm not going to say spring is in the air, but definitely temperatures are becoming a lot nicer. Finally broke above zero for the first time in quite a long time here where we are. And I'm looking forward to the spring. Got quite a few things left to do at the lake house, but I'm thinking this year is going to be the year to end everything. So really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, let's take a few minutes to see what Torah says on this day. And I hope you have a good revelations in the Torah today. Very important Torah reading today. God reminds us about the blessings and the curses. And if you don't think God curses people, well, guess what? It's the first thing he does in Genesis after Adam and Eve eat of the tree of knowledge. So we really have to be careful and listen to what God says because God is always a double-edged sword. He can be a blessing if we follow his ways, and he can be a curse if we don't. All that said, welcome, everybody, and let me start again. If I miss your chat, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm simply concentrating on the Torah reading. So we're at Deuteronomy 11:26. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you shall hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you to this day, and the curse, if you shall not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you to this day, to go after other gods which you have not known. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt set the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, behind the way of the going down of the sun, in the land of the Canaanites that dwelled in Arabah, over against Gilgal, besides the terebinth of Moreh? For ye are to pass over the Jordan to go into and possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you, and you shall possess it and dwell therein. And you shall observe to do all the statutes and the ordinance which I said before you to this day. Chapter 12. These are the statutes and the ordinances which ye shall observe to do in the land which the Lord, the God of thy fathers, hath given thee to possess it, all the days that you live upon the earth. You shall surely destroy all the places wherein the nations that you go, that ye are to dispossess, serve their gods upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every leafy tree. And you shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and burn their ashtarim with fire. And you shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and you shall destroy their name out of that place. You shall not do so unto the Lord your God. But the place that which the Lord your God shall choose out of all the tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation, shall you seek, and thither thou shalt come. And thither thou shalt bring your burnt offering and sacrifices and tithes and the offerings of your hand and your vows and your free will offering and the firstlings of your herd and your flocks. And there ye shall eat before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice in all that you put your hand unto, ye and your households, wherein the Lord thy God has blessed thee. Ye shall not do after that we do here this day. Every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes, for ye are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance which the Lord your God giveth thee. But when you go over the Jordan and dwell in the land which the Lord your God causes you to inherit, and he give you rest from all your enemies round about, so that you dwell in safety, then it shall come to pass that the place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there, thither shall you bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, and the offerings of your hand, and all your choice vows which you vow unto the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons, and your daughters, and your manservants, and your maidservants, and the Levite that is within your gates. For as much as he hath no portion, no inheritance with you, take heed to thyself that thou offer not thy burnt offerings in every place that thou seest, but in the place which the Lord shall choose in one of the tribes, there shalt thou offer thy burnt offerings, and there thou shalt do all that I command thee. Notwithstanding, you mayest kill and eat flesh within all thy gates, after all the desire of thy soul, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he has given thee. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as of the gazelle and of the hart. Only ye shall not eat the blood. Thou shalt pour out on the earth as water. Thou mayest not eat within thy gates the tithe of thy corn, or thy wine, or thy oil, or the firstlings of thy herd, or thy flock, nor any of the vows which thou vowest, nor thy free will offerings, nor the offerings of thy hand, when thou shalt eat them before the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. Thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite that is within thy gates, and thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God in all that thou puttest thy hand unto. Take heed to thyself that thou forsake not the Levite as long as thou livest upon thy land. And when the Lord thy God shall enlarge thy border, as he had promised thee, thou shalt say, I will eat flesh, because thy soul desireth to eat flesh. Thou mayest eat flesh after all the desire of thy soul. If the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to put his name there be too far from thee, then thou shalt kill of thy herd and of thy flock, which the Lord hath given thee, as I have commanded thee, and thou shalt eat within thy gates after all the desire of thy soul. Howbeit, as the gazelle and the hart is eaten, so thou shalt eat thereof. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof alike. Only be steadfast in not eating the blood. For the blood is the life, and thou shalt not eat of the life with the flesh. Thou shalt not eat of it. Thou shalt pour it upon the earth as water. Thou shalt not eat it, that it may go well with thee and with thy children after thee, when thou shalt do that which is right in the eyes of the Lord. Only thy holy things which thou hast, and thy vows thou shalt take, and go unto the place which the Lord shall choose. And thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, the flesh and the blood, upon the altar of the Lord thy God, and the blood of thy sacrifices shall be poured out against the altar of the Lord thy God, and thou shalt eat the flesh. Observe and hear all these words which I command thee, that it may go well with thee and with thy children after thee forever, when thou doest which is good and right in the eyes of the Lord thy God. When the Lord thy God shall cut thee off the nations from before thee, whether thou goest in to dispossess them, and thou dispossess them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou not be ensnared to follow them after that they are destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how used these nations to serve their gods? So will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord, which he hated, they have done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they do burn in the fire to their gods. Chapter 13. All this word which I command you, that shall ye observe to do it. Thou shalt not add nor diminish it from it. If there arise in the midst of thee a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he give you a sign or wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, wherefore he spoke unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or unto that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God putteth there you to proof, to know whether you love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul. After the Lord your God you shall walk, and him you shall fear, and his commandments you shall keep, and unto his voice you shall hearken, and to him you shall serve, and unto him you shall cleave. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he had spoken perversion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed thee out of the house of bondage, to draw thee aside out of the way which the Lord thy God commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put away the evil from the midst of thee. If thy brother, or the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, that is thine as thy own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, nor thy fathers, of the gods of the people that are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from one end of the earth unto the other end of the earth, thou shalt not consent unto him. Neither shall thy eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him, but thou shalt utterly kill him. Thy hand shall be the first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones, that he die, because he had sought to draw thee away from the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness as this in the midst of thee. If thou shalt hear tell concerning one of thy cities, which the Lord thy God giveth thee to dwell thee, saying, certain base fellows are gone out from the midst of thee, and have drawn away the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known. Then you shall inquire and make search and ask diligently, and behold, if it be truth, and the thing be certain, that such an abomination is wrought in the midst of thee, thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of the city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and that all that is therein, and the cattle thereof, which the edge of the sword. and thou shalt gather all the spoil of it into the midst of the broad place thereof, and shall burn with fire the city and all the spoil thereof, every whit unto the Lord thy God, and shall be a heap forever. It shall not be built again. And they shall cleave not of the devoted thing, and thou shalt cleave not of the devoted thing in thy hand, that the Lord may turn from the fierceness of his anger, and show thee mercy, and have compassion upon thee, and multiply thee, as he hath sworn unto thy fathers, when thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the whole Lord thy God, to keep all his commandments which I command you to this day, to do that which is right in the eyes of the Lord thy God. Chapter 14. You are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be his own treasure out of all the peoples that are upon the face of the earth. Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. These are the beasts that you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the hart, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the pygarg, and the antelope, and the mountain sheep, and every beast that parted the hoof, and hath the hoof wholly cloven in two, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that you may eat. Nevertheless, ye shall not eat of them that only chew the cud, or of them that only have the hoof cloven, the camel, the hare, the rock badger, because they chew the cud, but part not the hoof. They are unclean to you. And the swine, because he parted the hoof, but cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. These you may eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever hath fins and scales you may eat, and whatsoever hath not fins and scales you shall not eat, is unclean to you. Of all clean birds you may eat, but these are they which shall not be eaten: the great vulture, the bearded vulture, the osprey, the glede, the falcon, the kite after its kind, and every raven after its kinds, and the ostrich, and the nighthawk, and the seamew, and the hawk after all its kinds, the little owl, and the great owl, and the horned owl, the pelican, the carrion vulture, and the cormorant, and the stork, and the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, and the bat. All winged swarming things are unclean unto you. They shall not be cleaned. Of all clean winged things you may eat. You shall not eat anything that dieth of itself. Thou giveth unto the stranger that is within thy gates, that he may eat of it, or thou shalt mayest sell it unto a foreigner, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see the kids in his mother's milk. Thou shalt surely tithe all the increase of thy seed, that which is brought forth in the field by year, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he hath chose to cause his name to dwell there, the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oils, and the firstlings of thy herd, of thy flock, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord your God always. And if the way be too long for thee, that thou may not be able to carry it, because the place is too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, when the Lord thy God shall bless thee, then shall turn it into money, and bind up the money in thy hand, and shall go up to the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. And thou shalt bestow all the money for whatsoever thy soul desireth, for oxen, for sheep, for wine, for strong drink, or for whatever thy soul asketh of thee, and thou shalt eat it there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thy household. And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no portion nor inheritance with you. At the end of every 3 years, even in the same year, thou shalt bring forth all the tithes of thy increase, and shall lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he hath no portion nor inheritance with thee, stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, that are within thy gates shall come, and shall eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the works of thy hands which thou doest. At the end of every 7 years thou shalt make a release, and this is the manner of the release. Every creditor shall release that which he hath lent unto his neighbor. He shall not exact it of his neighbor and his brother, because the Lord's release had been proclaimed. Of a foreigner thou may exact it, but whatsoever is of thine with thy brother, thy hand shall release. Howbeit there shall be no needy among you, for the Lord will surely bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. For an inheritance to possess it. If only thou diligently hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all this commandment which I command thee to this day. For the Lord thy God will bless thee as he promised thee, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, but shalt not borrow. And thou shalt rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over thee. If there be among you a needy man, one of thy brethren, within any of the gates, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thy heart, nor shut thy hand from thy needy brother, but shalt surely open thy hand unto him, and thou shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need in that which he wanted. Beware that there may not be a base thought in thy heart, saying, the seventh year of release is at hand, and thine eye be evil against thy needy brother, and thou give him not, and he cry unto the Lord against thee, and it shall be sin in thee. Thou shalt surely give it to him, and thy heart shall not be grieved when thou givest unto him, because that for which this thing the Lord thy God will bless thee in all thy work, and in all that thou puttest in thy hand unto. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt surely open thy hand unto the poor and needy brother in thy land. If thy brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. And when thou lettest go free from thee, thou shalt not let him go empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy threshing floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. Therefore I command this thing today. And it shall be, when he says unto thee, I will not go out from thee, because he loveth thee and his house, and your house, because he fareth well with thee, then thou shalt make an awl, and thrust it to his ear into the door, and he shall be thy bondman forever. And also unto thy bondwoman thou shalt do likewise. It shall not seem hard unto thee when thou let him go free from thee, for to double of the hire of a hireling hath he served thee 6 years. And the Lord thy God will bless thee in all that thou doest. And all the firstling males that are born of thy herd and of thy flock, thou shalt sanctify unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt Do no work with the firstling of thine ox, nor shear the firstling of thy flock. Thou shalt eat it before the Lord thy God, year by year, in the place which the Lord shall choose, thou and thy household. And if there be any blemish therein, lameness or blindness, any ill blemish whatsoever, thou shalt not sacrifice it to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean and the clean may eat it alike, as the gazelle and as the hart. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. You shall pour it upon the ground as water. Chapter 16. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. And thou shalt sacrifice a Passover offering unto the Lord thy God of the flock and of the herd, and in place which the Lord shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread therewith, and even the bread of affliction. For in haste didst thou come forth out of the land of Egypt. And that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leaven seen with thee in all thy borders 7 days, neither shall there neither shall any of the flesh which thou sacrificest the first day at even remain it at night until the morning. Thou mayest not run sacrifice the Passover offering within any of thy gates which the Lord thy God giveth thee, but at the place where the Lord thy God shall choose to cause his name to dwell in. There thou shalt sacrifice the Passover offering at even going down of the even at the going down of the sun at the season, and thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt. And thou shalt roast and eat it in place which the Lord thy God shall choose. And thou shalt turn it in the morning and go into thy tents. 6 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt do no work therein. 7 weeks thou shalt number thee unto thee, for the time of the sickle is first put to the standing corn, shalt thou begin to number 7 weeks. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto the Lord thy God, after the measure of the free will offering of thy hand, which thou shalt give, according as the Lord thy God blesses thee. And thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God, thou and thy son, and thy daughter, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and a Levite that is within their gates, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are in the midst of thee, in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And I shall remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and I shall observe and do these statutes. Thou shalt keep the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, and after that hast gathered in from thy threshing floors and from thy winepress, and thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a feast unto the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose, because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy increases and in all the work of thy hands, and thou shalt be altogether joyful. 3 times a year thou shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place where he shall choose, on the feast of unleavened bread, on the feast of weeks, and on the feast of tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty. Every man shall give what he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which hath given thee. Well, there we have it, folks. That was a Torah reading for today. And let me just go scroll back here so I can go back and, give a little bit of comment on today's Torah reading. And again, I remind everybody I am a student of the law and the prophets. I'm not a scholar by any means, but I'm glad to say that the Spirit of Elohim teaches us. Deuteronomy 11. Let me just get back there. Close this. Okay. So the first thing I highlighted today, actually, I should have been at Deuteronomy 16. There we go. (11:26). Let's get back there. Okay. So right at the beginning of the Torah reading, we read the blessings and the curse. Behold, I said before you this day a blessing and the curse. A blessing if you shall hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, and a curse if you turn aside the way which I command you to go after other gods. Well, there we have it, folks. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Everything, every blessing from the Most High Elohim is conditional. We got to do things His way to get blessed. Next one I have is at the beginning of chapter 12. These are the statutes and the ordinances which you shall observe to do in the land. So, I don't know how come some Christian faiths have all these wild doctrines like once saved, always saved, that the Torah is not relevant anymore, that we don't need to do any of God's commands because Yeshua came to the earth. I mean, right from the get-go, it's all conditional. Which you shall observe to do, which the Lord thy God that hath given to possess it all the days that you live upon the earth. So we are actually commanded to do the teachings of the Torah all our days upon the earth. There's no other way to change that. Anyways, I'll continue. So next one I have is verse 12:4. So basically, you shall not do unto the Lord your God, but unto the place which you shall choose out of your tribe to put his name there, even unto his habitation. Okay, so we're not even allowed to make sacrifices anywhere else but where God chose to put his name. And so far throughout history, the only places I know of is Jerusalem and Bethel. At first, they were doing all the sacrificial offerings at Bethel. And then, if I remember correctly, it was David, when he did his census, he was so afraid to go out because the angel of the Lord was basically punishing Israel for doing the census that David asks God if he can sacrifice somewhere else because he was too afraid to go out and get killed by the angel of the Lord who was executing the judgment. So that's it. That's the only two places we're allowed to sacrifice. So if you are thinking of doing a sacrificial offering? Well, first of all, uh, we don't have the temple anymore. We don't have the Levites to do. So we can't even do many of these commands. I'll just leave it at that. Verse 8. Uh, so here's something funny, not funny, but something striking. Here, Moses, and you're wherein the Lord thy God has blessed thee. You shall not do after all that we do here to this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes. So when the Israelites were still traveling, I guess maybe the law wasn't there yet. So we are commanded not to do whatever is right in your eyes. So don't take it upon yourself to add or remove from the Torah, because God sealed it. And then verse 11, when he gives you rest from all your enemies round about, that you dwell in safety, then it shall come to pass that the place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there, thither you shall bring all that I command you. So all the offerings that are commanded from God, a good example is the Passover lamb. We're supposed to bring it all to the same place, not to sacrifice all over the world, so to speak, just in one space. Verse 15. So if you want to do a holy sacrifice, fine. You can only take it to Jerusalem or Bethel. But it doesn't prevent a hunter from feeding himself and his family like away from the temple. Verse 15, we read, notwithstanding, thou mayst kill and eat the flesh within all thy gates, after all the desire of thy soul, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he has given thee. So we're allowed to eat of our own flocks. We're allowed to eat of any of the game that we find, of course, within the confines of the clean and unclean animals. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as the gazelle and the hart. So you can actually, and then the only requirement after you kill a beast is to drain the blood on the ground. And we read that a little later in verse 21. If the place which the Lord thy God shall choose there be too far, then thou shalt kill of thy herd thy flock, which the Lord hath given thee, as I have, and thou shalt eat within thy gates after all the desire of thy soul. And here we read a little later in verse 23, only be steadfast in not eating the blood, for the blood is the life, and thou shalt not eat of the life with the flesh. So there we go. Verse 29, we're still in chapter 12 here, verse 12, 29. When the Lord thy God shall cut off the nations from before thee, whether thou goest to dispossess them, and thou dispossess them, and dwellest in their lands, take heed to thyself that thou shalt not be ensnared to follow them after that they are destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how use their nations, how to serve their gods, even so will I do likewise. So we're not even supposed to inquire about the other religions. And so why we must remain completely I'll say in accordance with the Torah, for all our worship practices. Any deviation is basically sacrificing to demons. So God already gave us everything that's holy. So there's no need to reinvent stuff. And we read the whore of Revelations, and that's why she's considered a whore, because they do add, they have a semblance of holiness, and they think they're holy in their minds, but in fact, they're basically mixing their offerings with every other kind of pagan ritual possible. So that's why we're not allowed to add or remove from the Torah. Chapter 13. Okay, chapter 13 to me is one of the most important chapters in the law. Basically, don't listen to a brother. Don't listen to a sister. Don't listen to an uncle. Don't listen to anybody or anything that suggests you to deviate from the ways of the Torah. And that's one of the hardest things that people just don't understand in these modern times. And we read it right at the start of verse 13. Okay, so there's verse 1232. Which is actually in this version of the Tanakh, verse 13, the first verse, verse 13:1. All this which I command to you that you shall observe to do, thou shalt not add thereto nor diminish from it. So we have verse 13:1 here in this version of the Tanakh. And the King James, it's 1232. And there's also verse 4:2. Those are two very short verses that we read in the Torah. And I have to admit that that's basically how people get off the short and narrow path. They start adding and removing things from the Torah, and that's basically the curse of leaving the ways of the Most High. So we read it right here. You shall not add thereto nor diminish from it. That's it. There's nothing to add or remove from the God's laws. And I stress that because basically all the Christian religions today, that's exactly what they did. They added and removed from the law of Moses. And that basically makes them an abomination in the same way as them who worship Baal or Ashtaroth or any of the other deities that the nations around Israel did. So Yeshua teaches us the two most important commands. He teaches us in Leviticus, in that we are not, Exodus 20, which is basically that we are supposed to honor God and God alone. Then he teaches us the love thy neighbor command, which is in Leviticus. And in my opinion, those were the number one and number two commands to follow. Number three would be Deuteronomy 13:1 here in this version of the Tanakh. Because that's basically where everybody goes away. A lot of people have love for God, a lot of people have a love for their neighbors, but then they deviate from the Torah. And here we see in verse 13:1 that we're not to do that. And why do we have to do the things that God commands us to do? We read it a little later in verse 4. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God puts you to proof to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. So, God may put a false prophet on your path. God may put even a false prophet that can do signs and wonders. Deuteronomy 13 tells us that if this false prophet teaches us to go away from the Torah, that we are to put him to death. Now, don't kill anybody, but certainly put him away from your life. Because in the modern times, putting you, following some of God's commands may land you in jail. So I'm sure God knows this, but certainly you can put that person away from your life because they're going to lead you off the wide path that leads to destruction. And that's a quote from Yeshua. Verse 13:8. Of the gods of the people that are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, or from one end of the earth, even unto the other end of the earth, thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thy eyes pity him, neither thou shalt spare nor conceal him. So God considers everything, every God from one end of the earth to the other, except save for himself, as a way to defile yourself. So don't mix it. Don't do it. Just follow the Torah. Verse 14, chapter 14. I just want to reiterate quickly, Deuteronomy 13. I know it's a hard chapter to read because basically God is commanding us to kill off members of our families, kill off friends, and kill off whole cities of Israel if they deviate from his law. And there's no other ways to mince that. It's follow the law. Verse 14. Okay, so we read the commands, not to make baldness between your eyes for the dead, nor to do any cuttings or tattoos. So don't do those things. God tells us that we are not to do any of these things. A little later on in 14, Moses reiterates all the clean animals, basically a revision of what's in Leviticus for the clean and unclean animals. Verse 14, the last verse of chapter 14. So God, again, and the stranger, the fatherless in the window that are within thy gates shall come, and thou shalt eat and be satisfied, that the Lord may bless thee in all the work of thy hands, which thou doest. So actually feeding the poor, helping your fellow man or woman, these are things that God blesses us for. So don't lose the opportunity to be nice to somebody. And look, in the land of Israel, in verse 13, 15, we read, howbeit there shall be no needy among you, for the Lord will surely bless the land with God, which the Lord thy God hath given me for an inheritance. So with the law basically is the assurance, we could say, that there would be nobody needy in the land of Israel. So all these people that say that God does not allows people to go starving and hurt and everything else. He doesn't. The law is right here that we are to take care of the needy. Now, we are not complying with God's law because God's law provides for the needy as much as the producer. If there be among, let's go back to verse 7. If there be among you a needy man with any of thy gates. So, and we're also support to take in our brothers and sisters from the tribes of Israel. And when we release them on the 7th year, we are to release them with something, part of your flocks, maybe a little bit of currency or money, to make sure that he's paid for his release, at his release. So take another member of the tribe of Israel, but don't forget to also give him his portion once he leaves at the 7-year release. Now let's go to 16, chapter 16, 4. This is something I highlighted because this is something that I learned today. And there shall be no leaven seen with thee in all thy borders 7 days. So we've been doing the Passover now, my wife and I, for quite a while, 4 or 5 years maybe. And there we go. Again, I'm learning that we did it wrong. We would take the leaven and put it in the shed because we considered it out of the house. But here we read that the Torah commands us, there shall be no leaven seen with thee in all thy borders 7 days. So here's how I read this. The leaven has to be removed from our borders. So there we have it, folks. No leaven in any part of our property. Let's keep going. And that's it for the Torah reading. Let's switch to the prophet Isaiah. Today we're going to be reading Isaiah 54:11. Let's go there now. Isaiah. 54:11. O thou afflicted, tossed with tempests, and not comforted, behold, I will set thy stones in fair colors, and lay thy foundations with sapphires, and I will make thy pinnacles of rubies, and thy gates of carbuncles, and thy borders of precious stones, and all thy children shall be taught of the Lord. And great shall be the peace of thy children, in righteousness shalt thou be established. Be thou far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from ruin, for it shall not come near thee. Behold, they may gather together, but not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall because of thee. Behold, I have created smiths that bloweth fire of coals, and bringeth forth a weapon for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their due reward from me, saith the Lord. Chapter 55. Ho, everyone that thirsteth, come out ye for water, and he that has no money, come ye buy and eat. Ye come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and your gain for that which it satisfies not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness. Incline your ear and come unto me. Hear, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you. Even the sure mercies of David. Behold, I have given him for a witness to the people, a prince and a commander to the peoples. Behold, thou shalt call a nation that knowest not, and a nation that knew not thee shall be run into thee, because the Lord thy God, and for the Holy One of Israel, for he hath glorified thee. Well, there we go, folks. Some words of comfort to the people of Israel. So I just want to remind that we are still in the world, and we are still in the nations. Well, some of us are. Not everybody of Israel lives in the land yet. There will be a time when we will all be called back to the land. But for now, be comforted with when you're going through trials. Be comforted that it's not going to be forever. Joseph was in prison for years and years, which he himself was one of the redeemers of Israel, basically saved Jacob's family as an outcast in Egypt for years. So God doesn't spare pain and suffering from his people. We're not all we're not in the utopia yet. So if you think that following God is basically going to be without any trials or tribulations, you're fooling yourself, because look what happened to Yeshua, crucified at the tree. Look what happened to Joseph, spent years and years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Even God's most holy people go through trials and tribulations. So it's best, don't lose heart and don't lose hope. God grants us, He's going to put us a place where foundations with sapphires and pinnacles of rubies one day. But that's not. It's going to happen when Yeshua returns, and the Yeshua basically takes care of all the principalities and powers of the earth. All right, folks, it's been almost an hour. I hope you enjoyed this reading of the Torah. God willing, I'll be back next week, and we're getting really close to my first year as a sharing the Torah. So, God willing, I'll be able to finish, and we'll be able to learn together in the future. So, on that note, I want to bless you. Hope you have a good and wonderful week, and may God teach you in his ways so that you may be blessed and be grafted in the people of Israel. Thank you for listening, everybody. Have a great end of the Sabbath day. Shabbat Shalom. Ala Parasha.